Sports Talk Live Buffalo is sponsored by Celino Law.
Welcome, Sports Talk Live Buffalo. Adam Benigni alongside Hall of Famer Vic Carucci, Sports Director Jon Scott. Thanks for joining us here on the show on this Monday night. As always, going to get to the Sabres with Paul Hamilton as well, with what is now a very legitimate push for the playoffs. We'll have takes on that, but we're going to begin with the Bills coaching search, which is ongoing. And John, as we begin the show tonight, we do have some new information. Why don't you kick us off with that?
Yeah, they interviewed Davis Webb earlier today, and then this evening they are expected to speak with the Rams passing coordinator Nate Scheelhaase, who just had an extensive 7+ hour in-person interview with the Cleveland Browns earlier today for their head coaching position. So Scheelhaase is the latest here, which will bring that number up to 9 people who have interviewed for this Bills head coaching position. And this, Vic, coming in just a pocket where Joe Brady was the first one to interview just last Wednesday.
Yeah, and it's an interesting, pretty wide net. I would say the widest cast by any of the teams searching for coaches when you include Phillip Rivers in that conversation. I know we'll talk about that, but very interesting now to see Scheelhaase as a late add to this process, but it makes sense. Let these conference championship games play out. So Davis Webb and Scheelhaase, both on the losing teams in those conference games, gives the Bills the opportunity to expedite those interviews.
All right, so let's go ahead and take that full screen again now. And with the exception of Scheelhaase, here is the full list of candidates that the Bills have interviewed. You got Joe Brady, obviously the in-house option, Brian Daboll, former offensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, Phillip Rivers, as Vic mentioned, Anthony Lynn, Anthony Weaver. Watch this situation, I think, guys, with Grant Udinski, the Jags offensive coordinator. Very much wants the Bills gig. Got a pay raise in Jacksonville. They're letting him pursue the Buffalo job. Took himself out of the running in Cleveland as well. I think that's a name to watch as this proceeds. Davis Webb, as John mentioned, the Broncos passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And then let's go ahead and roll this, because another big name connected to the Bills and some other teams as well, Clint Kubiak, Seattle offensive coordinator, who they can talk to as well. They have to wait 2 weeks to actually talk to him because Seattle, of course, won in advance to the Super Bowl. What are the chances, John, we'll start with you, you think maybe they wait for him?
I think it's worth it to wait for them if they believe that he is someone that they are interested in and not just want to grab information and do some due diligence here, because I look at the other options that we laid out there on that graphic earlier. I'm not too concerned about people that will actually be in the mix that are in contention for this head coaching job not being available still in 2 weeks should the Bills want to fully extend this process here. I don't think Joe Brady necessarily, although he's getting extra head coaching interviews elsewhere, I think maybe he holds out for the Bills job, as well as Brian Daboll, as well. As you said, Udinski already has a spot in place as the Jags offensive coordinator with a pay raise, and he's going to let this thing ride on out here. I say, why not get another look at a guy who, from what you see with him doing with Sam Darnold and the offense overall in Seattle, I think he'd be a great person to get in front of and see if he'd be interested and if it could work.
You know, Clint Kubiak did himself a lot of favors in this coaching cycle with the job he did in that conference championship game on behalf of the Seahawks against the Rams. It was a creative game plan. He has done wonders. We know with Sam Darnold resurrecting his career, which was already mostly resurrected, but taking it yet to another level. And of course, Darnold doing his part to help the Seahawks reach the Super Bowl. But this 2-week wait, I think, is a problem in the process. And from what I've been learning, some of the reporting I've been doing in the course of today, the Bills, to my knowledge, up to this point, had not reached out to his representative to line up anything, which is still allowable. You can't have the conversation, but you can at least try to arrange for it. My understanding is that there are 2 teams that were planning to visit Kubiak in Seattle in this open week before the Super Bowl, and the Bills aren't one of those teams, of course. And if they had interviewed him virtually before this, they'd have been in a position to do that now, they being the Bills. They didn't do that. So I'm thinking that the candidate they want for this job, even if they want him, that the candidate that they will land on is probably one of the other aforementioned names.
All right, very interesting perspective on that, Vic. So let's go ahead and look at some of those other names relevant to today. I want to talk about Davis Webb here. And certainly you do get the sense as it continues that they're leaning toward an offensive mind coming off of the era they had with Sean McDermott and the situation that Josh Allen is in with that offense. There's a relationship, Allen obviously in on these interviews, which is another subject, whether or not that's a good thing. I do think he's earned that, and I think his input is going to be extremely valuable here. There's a relationship, John, with Davis Webb. How serious a candidate do you think he is?
I think he's serious, but I would liken him better for an offensive coordinator. He's only 31 years old. He's only been coaching since 2023 when he decided to hang it up here. I remember doing a story with Davis Webb while he was on the practice squad with the Bills, and coaching was always what was coming sooner rather than later for him. He was very open about that, and I think he's a bright mind that teams across the league are interested in. He has multiple head coaching interviews beyond the Bills here. I just don't know if this is the time is right. I firmly believe, and we'll get to this in a few minutes here, I think there is great value for the Bills to get a fresh voice and a fresh mind into that room. And even though he had a teammate relationship with Josh Allen, and it wouldn't be coach to player like he would as the head coach here, I think finding someone that doesn't necessarily have a previous relationship built with Josh Allen would be beneficial for this team. So that's where I kind of stand with Davis Webb. I would like him maybe in a coordinator position, but not as this team's next head coach.
Yeah, I don't know if Davis Webb has the gravitas to be a head coach at this point. I think more assistant coaching experience, exposure to doing that job and just doing what he's doing here with the interviews, multiple interviews for head coaching jobs would be beneficial to him. Now, he may land a head coaching job, and it might not be with Buffalo, but the Raiders have shown a lot of interest. My understanding is Tom Brady, the minority owner of the Raiders, is impressed with Webb, but others with whom I've spoken around the league have not necessarily been impressed with Webb's presence to be a head coach. And keep in mind, even though the young, hot coordinator guy, especially on the offensive side, is the attractive option for teams to hire, especially ones that have an outstanding quarterback like Josh Allen. But that said, you got to be more than that. You've got to be a CEO of your entire team. And I'll add this wide net that they've cast, all these names, what is it, 9, John said, or so, you're gaining something else in this process. You're only going to hire one guy, but you are learning from these others. You're picking brains along the way and downloading that information. So that is a big part of what the interview process is all about.
Well, certainly someone that they downloaded some information from and picked his brain at the very least is Phillip Rivers, right? And the Bills the first to actually interview him for a head coaching position. He has withdrawn his name from consideration, but he was another guy. I never took him seriously, John, as a candidate to become the Bills head coach, at least at this point, given his lack of experience. But in terms of someone that Josh Allen could relate to and someone who can see the game and all of those things, whether it be as a quarterback's coach or passing game coordinator or something of that ilk, I mean, I think Rivers could be a hell of an addition to a staff at this point, don't you?
Yeah, I think initially this was oh my gosh, they truly are turning over every single stone in a fast capacity here with this coaching search, because this came out of left field. People were losing their minds thinking the Bills are going to go from Sean McDermott to Phillip Rivers. I told them to pump the brakes here again, as Vic alluded to. This is as much about information gathering as it is searching for your next head coach. I think it was also a solid. His agent is the same as Josh Allen here. I agree. Maybe down the line, a coordinator or a position coach, but it sounds like he's more from the family standpoint, wants to go back to his high school coaching, be with his family there, and maybe pursue the NFL down the line, Vic.
Yeah, the out-of-the-box nature of this, I'm fine with. I thought it was interesting at the very least, and I do think it had more of an informational informational feel to it, then we truly want to get this guy and bring him aboard. Yeah, he would connect very well with Josh Allen or any quarterback, and maybe one day this would be the place for him. But just given his family dynamic, very hard to see that. I mean, look, we've got Sean McDermott's got 3 kids. I mean, coaches have families and kids. It's an extremely tough profession on that, and I can't imagine where Phillip Rivers is with kids, a lot of them, and grandkids, multiple. That would seem to be a real heavy weight.
I do think that something they have to guard against is like a buddy-buddy type relationship with Josh Allen, right? And, I feel like he's going to need someone who's going to push him. And now, if you consider a track record of success, though, then that's a little bit different. And that's how I bring up Brian Daboll's name, who was the initial front runner for this job. I don't know if he remains that, but what he did for Allen in his career and the heights that he's helped bring him to in terms of his level of play, he's got to factor in here. At what level, though, at this point? Is he still the favorite, Jon Scott?
I would say right now, Daboll or maybe Joe Brady would be the favorites, and I don't think that instills a whole lot of comfort or potentially enthusiasm amongst the fan base because they're known commodities here. To me, I think it would be prudent for the Bills to get a fresh voice, some fresh eyes in there, and someone, to your point, that isn't buddy-buddy or has a previous relationship with Josh Allen. That's the key there, is the relationship between the head coach and the superstar all-world reigning MVP quarterback here. But I think having someone who doesn't have all of the backstory with Allen to kind of make things uncomfortable in a positive way would be beneficial. I'm actually, and I've turned even in 24 hours, Clint Kubiak is a guy I think that I would like to see at least run the whole course of this process here and potentially get a serious look, Vic.
Yeah, I go back and forth on the fresh face voice versus established person. And I hear your point. It's a good one. But I am believing that continuity has to matter here, too. This deep into Josh Allen's career, especially, which is where this all revolves around, right? And I think with Joe Brady, at the very least, you have someone who has the foundational institutional knowledge. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. I know familiarity can breed contempt, and it certainly does with some fans. But I think a pairing of Brady as head coach and Daboll as offensive coordinator is not a bad way to go. You still have the veteran presence of Daboll working with Brady, and you also have a fallback position with Daboll if things don't work out with Brady. Keep in mind, cost is a thing here. He's an entry-level salary. Brady would be as a head coach. Daboll still being paid by the Giants. A big chunk of his salary, head coaching salary, would come from them, and then maybe the Bills would be on the hook if they paid him as a coordinator for about $2 million versus the additional $3 million that would come from the Giants. Keep in mind, assistant coaches from the Bills still on the staff. They're under contract. Not all of them are going to get new jobs. They're still on the payroll. So dollars and cents, always that perspective is always important when you're considering the numerous options that the Bills are looking at this point. Much more. This is going to have a lot of developing news, certainly throughout the course of the weekend. Have it updated for you on all platforms at WGRZ. Sports Talk Live is going to continue. When we come back, we'll switch gears and talk Sabres. They continue a very impressive run northbound in the standings and a push for the playoffs. Paul Hamilton in the house going to join John with takes on that. This is Sports Talk Live, Buffalo.